This conference will now be recorded.
In yesterday's session, we were discussing about values. What is persistent value and how to create a value, static values, dynamic values, and how to claim the values we discussed. Today, we'll try to understand config map and secret. Config maps and secrets in Kubernetes. So what is this config map and what is the secret? Right? Suppose if you take some projects, some applications, do we need to pass some configuration files or configurations as environment variables, like that can be some environment variables as a configurations like database usernames, passwords, or some other properties, or we need to provide some files like configuration files like property files, XML files, or YML files needs to be provided to your application, your container, for doing some executing some logic, right? If you take as an example the Spring Boot application, Spring Boot and Mongo application, are we passing some configurations like database credentials to this application, right? As of now, how we are passing these configurations can be passed as environment variables, if application is reading from environment variables, or we can pass as files like XML files or YML files if application is reading from files. Configurations can be passed as environment variables if application is reading from environment variables, or we can pass basically mount as files like XML file or YML file if application is reading from the files, right? And again, we are passing like this in the last example. Let me log in. Let me show you last example how we are passing. If you see in the last example how we are passing, it depends on application, right? This application, the image, the application which is running inside that container, how it is expecting those configurations like database usernames, passwords, and database details. How it is expecting? It is expecting to be passed as a environment variables. Environment variables. And if you see this application also, this database also expecting as an environment variables, right? And if you observe, does this type of configurations, is it going to be varied for each and every environment? Application configurations, does it change? Does it vary between environments to environments? Like for development environment, we need to have a different configurations, properties. For staging environment, we may need to pass different properties. For production environment, we may need to pass different environments. Now, here, the environments may change between, the configurations may change between environment to environment, and you want your application to be portable. Your image should be portable. And you want your image should be portable. You should not create, image for, for each environment. Sometimes in the interview also they will ask, are you creating a Docker image for each environment? Are you creating a different images? For dev environment, are you creating a different image, and production different image? They may ask these kind of questions, but we should not do that. Whatever image has been created, same image we are going to promote to the higher environments also. But in that case, if application team hard coded some configurations within their code, if application team hard codes their code, some configurations within the code, can we use same image for all the environments? If they hard code within the code, they hard code some configurations, we cannot use same. So it's a good practice to make our container images, reusable as possible. And image should not be used only for development or staging. The same image we should be able to use for all the environments. So in that case, you should pass configurations to the application at runtime. The developer should not hard code. So we can externalize the things. By passing configurations as environment variables, right? If you see last time how we are passing configurations to our applications, for the sample applications like database, username, password, or whatever it is, we are passing as an environment variables. If application is referring as an environment variable, suppose application is reading from some file. Let's say this is my container. I have some property file. Application is reading the configurations from this property file or XML file, right? Your Java process or .NET process. If it is reading the configurations from property file, XML file instead of environment variables, can I use volumes concept? Can I mount, instead of copying, instead of hard coding in this file, can I mount the files also to containers or pods? Suppose from outside, will I able to mount some that configuration files to my pod if they are reading from files also? If you understand the volumes concept, mount. Can I mount the way we have mounted folders? Can I mount folders from outside, files from outside to my container? I will have configurations in this file. If required, can I mount that file also to the pod? I will mount this file to the development environment. I will mount different property file or YML file in a production environment if they are reading from the files also. So based on application, if they are reading the properties configurations as environment variables, we can pass it as an environment variables, or we can mount files like XML, YML configuration files if application is reading from the files. Now, if I maintain like this, is it a best practice? This application is reading from the environment variables I am passing, but is it a best practice? Can I use same YML for all the environments? Can I use same manifest for all the environments? If you see here, will I able to use same manifest, this Kubernetes manifest for all the environments? And also we are going to maintain these Kubernetes manifest files into version control systems. Is it recommended to maintain some confidential data in a human readable format here, even though I am passing as an environment variable? Right? This information will be maintained as part of your version control system. So in that case, is it recommended to have maintain this in a version control system? No. So that is where in Kubernetes we have a concept of config maps and secrets, right? So we already know with the Docker container, we can keep our configurations outside of image. We can refer and use environment variables. That is already done. Now, in Kubernetes, we are passing environment variable like this, but instead of passing like this, I can hide this data from manifest, and I can refer this environment data from a config maps. I can refer this information from a config map. If I can create a config map in Kubernetes, then I can refer these values from that config map instead of defining directly in your manifest. I can create a config map as a key value pairs, or I can create a config map with file content, and I can read it as an environment variable, or I can mount as a values also. So in Kubernetes, we have a concept of config map. As I already told, application configurations may vary between staging, production, development environment, right? So Kubernetes allow you to provide a configuration information. Kubernetes will allow you to provide a configuration information to our applications. Applications are nothing but your pods, containers. Kubernetes will allow you to provide a configuration information to your application, nothing but your containers, pods, through config maps or secret resources. We can pass configuration information to our applications, our pods, through config maps or secret resources, right? So what is config map? What is secret? Basically, both config map and secrets, we can store data as a key value pairs. Config map or secret is again one Kubernetes resource. The config map and secret is again one Kubernetes resource. the way we are creating a deployment service. Similarly, we have a config map. We have a secret. We can create a config map and secret as a data, key value pairs, or with file content. But config map will maintain the data in a human readable format within Kubernetes. Config map will maintain the data, or config map will store the data in Kubernetes as a human readable format. When it comes to secrets, Kubernetes will store the secrets in an encoded format, in encoding format within a Kubernetes. So if you have some critical data, like passwords, database connection string, or some confidential information, then as a which Kubernetes resource we can store the data? Which one is recommended between config map and secrets? Secrets. Non-confidential information as a config maps. Okay. Now, as I already told, this is not recommended. It should not be passed like this. Now, can I create a config map for this data? Can I create a config map for this data? And can I refer these environment variables from that config map instead of directly referring here? Can I create a config map for this data? Then config map or secret. Can I create a config map and secret for this data? And can I refer those information here in our pod manifest? Can we pass configurations to our pods using config maps and secrets? Yes. Let me show that. Now, we have a concept of config maps and secrets. Config map secret, right? Config map or secrets. So very important also. So as I already told, config map is again Kubernetes resource to store non-confidential data in a key value pairs. Config maps are used to store non-confidential data in a key value pairs. Pods can consume config maps. Pods can consume config map as an environment variables or command line arguments. Or can I mount config map as a value? The configuration content, the configuration file as a value, the way we have mounted host path NFS, right? We can mount config map also as a value, configuration file, config map as a value also, based on your use case. So config map allow you to decouple environment specific configuration. Config map allow you to decouple environment specific configuration from your images so that your applications are easily portable. So the config map does not provide any encryption. If you want to store any confidential data, then what is recommended? Instead of config map, which object is recommended if you want to maintain any confidential data? This secrets. Sometimes in the interview, they are going to ask, how do you hide confidential information in Kubernetes? Sometimes in the interview, how do you hide or how do you maintain confidential information in Kubernetes? What is the answer for that? The simple answer, basically, we can use secrets. We can create a secret and we can refer those secrets, or we can refer those secrets in our pods as a environment variables, or as a values also. You can mount the confidential files to your pods. Now I can create something like this, config map as a key value pairs, as a key value pair, any key, any value, or file content. Suppose you have some property file, you have some XML file which you want to mount. You want to mount the file content or file as values. You can go like this, your file content, or you can create a key value pairs. These key value pairs you can refer as an environment variables or command line arguments. This property, I mean to say this file content, you can mount it as a value, right? You can mount it as a value. Now, I don't want to pass like this. I don't want to pass like this. Can I create a config map for these key value pairs, and can I refer those config maps in my pods now? Here, let me show that how to do that. Now, instead of passing like this, I can create a config map for a normal data, for a non-confidential data. I can create a config map like this. Using command also you can do that, or using YML file also you can do that. Something like this. Spring app config key value, key value. This can be any key, any value. Can I say something like this? If I feel username is not confidential, can I create a config map like this? Any key, any value. That can be any key, any value. Something like this. Then something like this. But if you feel this is confidential, instead of creating this information as a config map, can I go for a secret? If you feel this is confidential, if you want to maintain this in an encryption format within Kubernetes, then you can go for a secret. Secret. The way you have a config map, there is a concept called secret. Secret. Instead of going for a config map, you can go for a secrets. As I already told, secret contains data, sensitive data as a key value pairs. These are encrypted and maintained in a Kubernetes. So I can create a secret like this. I can create a secret like this, right? Key value pairs of data. So again, there are different types of secrets. There are different types of secrets here. User defined data, key value data. You can create a secret of type this opaque base 64 encoded data. Let's say, suppose I want to maintain my Docker hub credentials. I want to maintain Docker registry credentials. Suppose I am passing or I am using private registry. Does Kubernetes needs to authenticate with private registry if it has to pull the images? If it has to pull the images, does Kubernetes needs to authenticate with your registry if you are using private registries? It has to authenticate. In that case, somehow I need to pass my Docker hub or my Docker registry credentials. In that case, I can create a config map. I can create a secret of this type. Right? Docker registry type, Docker configurations. Right? So if you want to maintain some certificates like SSL, TLS certificates, if you want to maintain in Kubernetes, that certificates also kind of a confidential information. So can I use this of this type, secret of this type, secret of TLS type, so that it can maintain the SSL or TLS certificates as a secret? So this opaque is the default secret type. Opaque is the default secret type, where we can create a secret with arbitrary data. Arbitrary data in the sense our own key value pairs. Our own key value pairs. Something like this. Something like this. Our own key value pairs. Even though you eliminate this type, right, it will be kind of a key value pairs. Your own arbitrary data. So can I create a secret like this for my own key value pairs? Something like this. Type, I can say something like this. Opaque. This, even though I don't define, that is the default one. So here, can I create my own key value pairs? I can create using manifest the secrets. If I have multiple secrets, suppose I have another secret. Something like this. So multiple key value pairs. I can create a config map. I'll create a config map. I'll create a secret. Then I can refer that those config maps and secrets here. How to use a Docker private registries, I will explain. Okay. First of all, you should know what is config map and secret, then you can understand. So that also I will show how to use private images in the Docker, Kubernetes. How we can pass that information. I will show that. Now, I am creating a config map and secret. Suppose I have a dev Kubernetes cluster. In dev Kubernetes cluster, can I create a config map and secrets with the dev configurations? Can I create a config map and secret for dev Kubernetes cluster with the dev configuration? Suppose I have a production cluster. In production cluster, in prod cluster, can I create a config map and secrets with prod configurations? Something like this. Just I'm giving an example. In prod cluster, can I create a config map and secret with prod configuration? Suppose I have dev Kubernetes cluster, I have a production Kubernetes cluster. We can create a config map in dev cluster with the dev configurations. You can create a config maps and secrets. In prod cluster, you can create a config maps and secrets with prod cluster. So this information either you can maintain in a version control system, and instead of hard coding or maintaining in version control system, suppose if I am using some kind of a Jenkins, can I pass this as a Jenkins secrets, Jenkins secret files? If I don't want to maintain in SCM, you can pass this as a Jenkins secrets, or you can use some other logic to maintain in a SCM, right? For each environment, you can maintain a separate folder. In each environment, you can maintain a separate folder where you can maintain these manifest files in the SCM itself. And based on the environment which you are applying, based on the environment which you are deploying, can I apply these config maps and secrets only from that folder, and the rest of the thing is common. Rest of the thing is common. You can maintain these config maps, secrets as a manifest, or you can execute as a command from your pipelines. Based on the environment which you are deploying, you can execute the appropriate commands or you can apply appropriate YMLs. Now, I'm going to create a config map and secret like this. Now here, can I refer like this instead of hard coding in my actual manifest? Can I do like this? If it is a key value pair, value from config map key ref config map key reference name, your config map name, then key within that config map, from which key you want to refer. Can I refer like this? Instead of directly passing, I'm saying now take the value from, read the value from. Now where the Kubernetes will read this value, this database username. Now if I have like this, where Kubernetes will read and pass the value as an environment variable now for this one. If I have like this, it will read from the config map. Now this one, if you see something like this, right? I already told. So you can create a config map, right? Then this config map data you can pass as an environment variables based if your application is expecting as an environment variable, or you can mount as a file, as I already told. So I created a config map like this. Now in our pod manifest, am I doing like this? Value from config map key reference, value from config map key reference, then the name. This name is nothing but what? The name is nothing but what? The config map name which you created. The config map name which you created. Suppose I created a config map with this name. Then do I need to use that name here? That name, config map name, key. Your within that config map, from which key you want to take the value. Similarly here, can I do like this? Instead of hard coding, value from secret key reference, name, key. The secret name, I created a secret with, let's say, I created a secret with like this, Spring App secret or Spring App configs, Spring App secrets. Now I can refer like this, something like this. Now here also, value from config map key reference name and key. So config map name, this is my config map name. The key is this. The key is this. Similarly here, instead of hard coding, can I say value from secret key reference name and again key, your secret key, something like this. configmap secrets, and the key will be whatever you are trying to do. Now, if you see, now I am referring from where those environment variables am I passing directly. If you see here, this is my manifest now. There is some indentation. Let me correct. Now, let me correct the indentation. The indentation should be corrected, otherwise it will not work. Now, Deepak is asking one question. Should we have these resources in the same namespace? Should we have these resources? I mean to say, do we need to create these config maps and secrets in the same namespace where our pods are deployed, right? Yes, it should be in a same namespace. So we have Kubernetes resources at a namespace scope. Some of the Kubernetes works in a namespace scope. Some Kubernetes resources are at a cluster scope. So if you see, let me show you once. If you see, wherever you see namespaced true, wherever you see this Kubernetes API resources namespaced true, what does that mean? What is the scopes of these resources, right? Like pods namespaced true, which means can I create a pods under a namespace or at a cluster scope? Pods will be namespaced, which means I can create a pods within some namespace. Similarly, if you see the config maps and secrets, if you see config maps and secrets also, where is config map secrets? If you see, these secrets are also namespace true, which means within the namespace it works. Similarly, config map. But if you see Kubernetes nodes is at what scope? Cluster scope. And also if you see persistent values these values are namespace scoped or cluster scoped values, which means volume can be created in any namespace. And the claim, suppose I have a volume available in default namespace, someone is trying to claim from some other namespace, does this claim can get this volume? The volume is created in a default namespace. Now I am trying to create a claim for a different application that is running in a different namespace. Does this claim can get this volume? Yes. Volumes are not at a namespace scope. It's a cluster-wide resources. Volumes are cluster-wide resources, not namespace resources. But wherever you see true, which means can I call these resources as a namespace scoped resources? Yes. Which means now the config map and secrets also works at a namespace scope. Now, if you see Let me do the dry run of this YML. Let me do the dry run of this YML. Just to check any syntax issues. Line number 34, we have a problem. Line number 34 here. There might be some hidden spaces, tabs, all those things, guys. Let me do one thing. Let me take this. You use any editors, okay? You use any editors while writing so that you can avoid these issues. If you see, the indentation is not correct actually. So better, I'll okay. So this is fine. Let me take this. Let me do the dry run once. Yeah, it looks good. Okay, this is fine, right? So now, if you see, let me delete all these things, whatever I have. Whatever I have, I'm trying to deploy again. If you see, I am referring from the config maps and secrets. I am referring from the config maps and secrets, right? Now, did I created a config map and secret? Did I created a config map and secret so far in this cluster for that application? I'm just referring. But did I created a config map and secret so far in this cluster? I am referring some values from the config maps and secrets. So I'm just referring, but am I creating? Here I'm referring. Here this is reference. This is we are just referring, reading from the config maps. But do we have this config map and secret? As of now, do I have any config map with that name? Do I have any secret with that name? No. So that manifest, I'm just referring a config map and secret, and I don't have those config maps and secrets created. Now, if you see why my parts are in pending state, why? What is this error status? Container config error, create container config error. Why we have our parts in this status now? First of all, in this manifest, I don't have defined my config maps and secrets. First of all, I don't have my config maps and secrets defined. So why it is in pending state? I mean to say this state, order doesn't matter, guys. Don't say order. Okay. Why? What is the problem? What is the problem? Why my parts are in this state? Container, create configure. The config my map. It is not a file. That is object. That is not a file. Did I created a config map? That is not a file. We are using that file to create a config map. But do I have a config map with this name or secrets with that names? The Kubernetes object. So that's why the parts are in this state. Now I can create this config map. I can create this config map either first or last, that doesn't matter. Order doesn't matter. But is our pod is expecting a config map, since we are referring something from the config map and secret? Is our pod is expected that config map or secret to be created or available in the cluster? Now the pod is expecting the config map to be available in the cluster. Did I created that config map or secret either manually, using commands or using manifest? That doesn't matter. So we don't have. So if you want, you can create a config map using command also, or you can create a config map using YML also. Now, something like this, right? Now, I am applying this one. Config map is created. Config map is created. But why still parts are in same state? Because that is expecting secret also, because we are reading some secret. Now, is it going to expect secret also now? Spring app configs we have created. Now we have this config map with this name, Spring app configs. With this name, we created a config map. If you see, do I have a config map with that name, Spring app configs? Now, if you see, still the parts are still in that state only. Why? What it is expecting now? Again, it is expecting the secret, the secret, the secret to be available, right? Now, let me create a secret also. That can be in same YML, that can be in a different YML, that don't, again ask same question, that how you want to manage, right? In a single YML, you can manage, or if you want to have a better readability, you can create in a separate YML, okay? But if I use like this same manifest, suppose I want to apply that manifest in prod stage production, same prod stage production, I'm going to use same YML, then again same config map with same values will be created, right? So if I have this one itself, if I have everything in this one itself, then if I apply that in the prod also same configurations. This is common for all the environments. The configurations and secrets will be different for each environment. Can you have those manifest in a different folders? Only those config maps and secrets based on the environment, you can apply those config maps and secrets from that folder, whatever way you want to manage. Now, I have this secret also defined here. Now let me apply. Uh, Arvind is asking, we have to keep secrets and config maps in Git repo. That is up to you. You can maintain, but instead of hard coding this one, right? Because if you maintain in GitHub, again, will it have this confidential information? If you maintain this manifest, again, does GitHub will have this again? You are separating from pod manifest, but you are maintaining in a separate file. So you can maintain, then you can pass these values using how? That is what your learning will come. If you want to pass something in the automation, can I use Jenkins? We can pass at runtime parameters, or you can pass at Jenkins parameters, secrets, Jenkins secrets are there, or there is a separate security softwares are there, like HashiCorp vault. So you can create a secrets in HashiCorp vault. Here you can refer that secret from HashiCorp vault. There are a lot of solutions available, right? In Jenkins also, suppose in Jenkins, can I create a secret Jenkins secret, and while applying this manifest, can I modify that secret? Can I refer that secret? Can I modify this config map with that secret, and can I apply? Or if I am using command, to create a config maps or secrets, suppose something like this, I am using a command. Now suppose I'm trying to create a config map in my Jenkins through via Jenkins, right? Using command like this. Here, can I refer this from Jenkins secret? I can create using manifest file also, or I can using command also. This is same. This is same with this one. Now, in my stage, in Jenkins pipeline, can I have like this? In that Jenkins pipeline, can I have like this? Similarly, secret also. You can create using command also or manifest also. If you are using manifest, you can you replace this content in your pipeline before applying? If you are applying from a YML, that is what the learning is. Okay. You have to apply all the concepts, whatever you have learned, and you need to achieve that requirement. Now for this one, can I create a secret? Can I create a Jenkins secret if required? Jenkins secret like this, right? Then you can apply. Otherwise, there are a lot of other security, I mean to say secret management softwares. HashiCorp Vault, one of the secret, management software nowadays people are using is HashiCorp Vault. Vault. Now, let me see. There is a problem here. Illegal base 64 input. It is string data. It's not data. Here it is string data. For this one, it is string data. It is not data for this one actually. Now let me apply. Now I have a config map created in my cluster. I have a secret created my cluster. Now if you see, these config maps or secrets are referred in my pods. These config maps or secrets are referred in my pods, my pod manifest. Now if you see, this is fine. This is fine. The deployment is created successfully, but why this pod is not coming up? After creating a config map and secret, the pods which is managed by the deployment is successful, but why this is not came to successful? Because as a which Kubernetes resource I am trying to manage this pod, as a which Kubernetes resource I am trying to manage this pod, this one, RS. So let me see. If you see in the database, I have given correct only Spring App Configs. The config map name is correct. Spring App Secrets. The secret name is also correct. But since it is managed by replica set, it is not reflecting. In that case, do I need to delete and apply? I mean to say, if I delete that, then it will recreate. Now, it was expecting config map and secret prior to that one. That is not there. It was still in a pending, that error only. Or something is messy. Let me see. So Spring App configs. Is it correct? Typo. Spring App configs. Spring App configs, correct. Spring App secrets. Spring App secrets, correct only. So which means let me delete that RS. Let me delete that RS. Then I will apply. Then let me apply again. This time, 1 second guys, I think something is wrong. Is spelling might be wrong, or the config map secret reference might be wrong. Okay, I got it. The problem with this one, DB password in the secret is not found. DB password, DB password. Correct only. DB password, DB password. Is there any typo spaces? Oh, here, sorry. Let me correct guys everything. Let me correct everything. Here, there is a typo, right? Then here I am using something else. But here somehow I copy pasted same thing. So here it is correct. For this one it is working. For the other one it is not working. So here actually I have created like this, something like this. Either I need to change this one or I need to change my secret key. Let me apply this. Since I am using replica set, if I apply this, will it reflect guys? Since I am using replica set, I updated the properties of replica set. Even though if I apply, does the pod will be recreated? As you already know, if for the replica sets and the replication controllers, is it going to recreate the pod? Even though I corrected, it is not recreated. So let me delete this RS. Then let me apply. So I have to apply this one. Now let's see. Is pod came to the running state now after corrected that property. Now these pods are being, is using config maps and secrets to read those environment variables now. Is these pods are using config maps and secrets to read those environment variables? Now same manifest, can I use same manifest for other environment by creating a config maps and secrets with different values for that environment now? Can I use same manifest for other environments like prod environment by creating the config map with the prod configurations, right? So these config maps and secrets is helping us to externalize configurations which is specific to each environment from our pods. Using config maps and secrets, can I pass configurations to our pods, our applications, either as an environment variable or as a file also I can mount. I'll come to that. Will this help us to externalize configurations from our pods? Yes. Now, as I already told, if you see in Kubernetes, this config map, how it is maintaining, the data in a config map, how it is maintaining. I am trying to describe config map, this config map. Is it maintaining in human readable format? If you see, this is the user, key, this is the value. Now if required, I can see in a YML also, or I can edit directly all these things. I can see the config map, secrets, pods in a YML format like this. It is maintaining in a human readable format, right? But when it comes to secret, how it is maintaining? When it comes to secret, even though I describe the secret, will I able to see the secret? Now it is saying 9 bytes. It is saying 9 bytes, but is it displaying actual value? What is actual your database password? No. It is encrypted and maintained in this secret. Now I can refer config maps and secrets in my pod manifest as what? The config maps and secrets as of now, the key value data I'm referring it as what? I'm referring as a environment variables. Now, how to mount it as a file? I can mount as a file. You can just mount, but does your application or whatever process which is running inside that container, does it has to read that file? Let's take this requirement. Now, let's say, just to give a simple example, I'm taking this one. Now I am running my Tomcat. I am running my Tomcat pod. I am running Tomcat pod, right? I have pod. This is my pod in my Kubernetes cluster. Within the pod, I have a Tomcat container. This is my Tomcat container, let's say. Now, this is my Tomcat container. Now I want to have a Tomcat users.xml. I want to have a, do we have a Tomcat users.xml? Now I want to modify something in the Tomcat users.xml. And again, I don't want to hard code, right? I want to change, I want to pass this at runtime. I mean to say, whenever I am creating, I want to modify this Tomcat users.xml file, just to give an example. Now, how can I do that, guys? So now, as of now, the Tomcat users doesn't have any username password, the default. Now I want to add this username password for this Tomcat users that has to be used, that will be used by your Tomcat process. Now how can I do this? Let me show that. By default, let's say Java web app. Let me deploy this application. Let me deploy this application. So this application is using Tomcat base image. I think that is in test namespace. This is in test namespace. That is fine. So this is in pending state because of no resources available, that you can leave it, you can ignore. This is in pending state. You can ignore that. Why it is in pending state? That is in pending state because of no CPU. I mean to say no memory. I'm requesting some memory. That much memory is not available in my cluster. That's why pod is not. I'm requesting this much memory. That much memory is not available in the cluster. That's why it is not running. Otherwise, you just change it to one replica only. Let me change to one replica. But here also I have horizontal pod autoscaler. Let's say I want only one. Now, if you see one replica, it is able to accommodate. Now, this has the Tomcat, manager application. The Tomcat manager application. I think this is the user local Tomcat conf. This is the Tomcat home directory for that container. I have a Tomcat users.xml. Now, if you see this Tomcat users.xml, as of now, we don't have anything. We don't have any Tomcat users. Just to give an example, I am taking this one. Now, I want to, this is one configuration. At a Tomcat perspective, can I call this one as one configuration? Tomcat users.xml is one configuration file for Tomcat where I can, have a Tomcat users or server.xml. That is kind of a configuration. Now, if you see, I don't have any Tomcat user. Now, how can I update? How can I update or how can I pass this configuration to my pod? Now, can I create a config map with this file content? Can I create a config map with this file content like this? Let me take config map, right? Instead of key value pairs, what is the other way I can create a config map? Instead of key value pairs, I can define a key value pair. Otherwise, I can create a files also, file content like this. I can create a file content like this, right? So here I need to make this properly indented, right? Let me delete unnecessary data. Whatever is required, I'll keep that one. This should be properly indented, guys, again. Now, I'm creating a config map like this. Tomcat users.xml, that is a file name, then colon, the pipe symbol. Now, this is my file content. Now, this is my config map. In my pod manifest, here, can I use that config map as a value? As I told, we can mount config maps also as a values. Now in my pod manifest, so here So here in this pod manifest, this is file content. Now here, can I use those as a values? Config map as a value, values, name, something like this, tomcat users config, some name, value name. Now here I can say config map, config map. So here, instead of using persistent value, instead of using host path, instead of using NFS, the value, what type of value I am using now? What type of value I am using now? Here, here, instead of persistent value, instead of host path value, instead of NFS value, now I am using config map as a value, something like this. Something like this, right? Config map and the name of the config map, right? Values, config map, then the name of the config map. So what is your name? Config map name. So this is my config map name. This is my config map name. So config map name. Then the file name. So in this config map, what is the file name I'm trying to refer here? This is the file content. It is not a key value pair. You can do this way also. Key value pairs and files. So this is one key and value. But these key and values, I can refer it as a environment variables. Now that is not my use case. I want to pass my configuration file. I want to pass my configuration file to my container. So I created a config map with this file. This is my file content. Then this config map, how I am attaching? I am attaching as a value to my pod. This is the name of your file in that config map. This is the name I have given for that in that config map. So the path also same. Now here under my container section, can I mount this config map value? Can I mount this config map value to this path? Can I mount that config map value to this path? Config map value to this path, my container. So in that case, will this content will be reflected? Does this content will be reflected in your container if I am going to mount that config map as a value? Here, what I do? Value mounts. Value mounts. Value mounts name. Whatever value name I have given here, that is the name I am giving here. Then, sorry, whatever value name I have given here, that is the value mount name I am giving here. Then here, mount path. Mount path. What is my mount path? Can I mount that config map to this path of my container? User local tomcat conf, that folder itself, or you can mount till that file, something like this. Mount path is this one, like this, like this. But since I am mounting a file instead of directory, since I am mounting a file instead of directory, so I am going to use only mount this path, subpath, mount path and subpath. So because this conf folder has lot of other files, this conf folder has a server.xml, lot of other files, but am I creating a config map with other files? Am I creating a config map with other files like server.xml? Lot of other files are there. If you see, lot of other files are there, not only just this one. I want to mount only this file, only this file. Now I am least bothered about other files. So what I am trying to do, I created a config map with that file content. Then I am mounting that value as a config map as a value. Then here I want to mount only that file. That's why I'm saying subpath. Now if I use like this, does this file will be mounted in your container on this file? Now if I deploy this, can I see this? Suppose I'm giving something like this. What are the roles, guys? Manager GUI, admin GUI, yeah? Manager GUI, admin GUI, right? Let's say I'm saying something like this. Now, if I create a config map with this file content and I am referring that config map as a value of type config map, and I am mounting that config map value. So now if I apply this, now if you see, I'm creating a config map with file content now, with file content. This config map I am attaching as a value for this use case. For this use case, I am attaching as a value of type config map. Then I am mounting that config map to this location. Now let me apply this. Now if you see, I have a config map. I am mounting that config map as a value. Now pod is getting created. Once the pod is in running state, let me see how it works. Let's wait for some. Unless until there is some indentation issue, some syntax issue in your config map, that file content, it should be come to the running state. Unless until there is an issue in this file now, because I am mounting this as a config map. Okay, our pod should come. If there is no issue with this content, our pod should be running, and I can see this in my pod, this location. The content should be reflected there. Let's see. I think there is some issue. That's why container is not coming up. Let's wait. Now we have a config. One second, guys. I think the problem here is, let me tell you, let me describe the pod. The problem here is because of the config map which I created. Why? Why now? What is the problem now? You tell me. Why it is saying Java web app config not found? I created a config map, but why it is saying it is not found? If you see, the pods are created in which namespace, guys? In which namespace I am trying to deploy this deployment? Testness. But the config map, if you see, the config map, if you see, I have not mentioned the namespace. In which namespace the config map is created? The default namespace. So that's why, is it able to get that config map? Is it able to read that config map? No. Now, in which namespace I have to create this config map now? In which namespace I have to create that config map now? The config map which I am referring as a value, that has to be in the same namespace, testness. Now let me apply again. So I created a config map also now in the same namespace where it is getting created. kubectl get config map -n test-ns. So I created a config map in the same namespace where my pod is scheduled. I mean to say where my deployment is scheduled. Now, do you see? Is it able to come to the running state now? Because it is waiting for that config map. Now, if you see, /user /local /tomcat /conf, the tomcat, one second, let me do the cat. Tomcat -users.xml in the test namespace. Did I updated anything in my image, guys? Did I updated anything in image? Did I updated anything in my image? How come this is reflecting in my container, the pod container? So now what is happening in the background? We created a config map. We created a config map. We created a config map. And did I mounted this config map as a value for my pod now? Did I created a config map? And did I use this config map as a value? I have a config map with this content. If you see, we have a config map. This config map. If you see, I have a config map created with this content. Now, this config map I am using as a value. This config map I am using as a value for this pod, for this deployment. For this deployment. If you see, is not typing. If you see values of what type I am using now for this requirement, config map. So I am mounting the config map as a value to this content, Now that is why my pod is having that data. Now similarly, if your application, let's say you are using Java based application, or you are using some Python based application, application is reading some properties or configuration from some property file. Can I mount that property file also as a value, as a config map? I can create a config map with whatever data I want to have in that file, and can I mount that file, the config map file, as a value? So this way also, suppose in production I want to have a different value, different content in this file. Can I create a config map with a different content in this file? And if I apply this like this, is it going to have the data in your pod? Config maps can be used by passing the values as a environment variables also. And also, can I use config maps to mount the content configuration files as a values? Guys, very important. In real time, we are going to use all these things. We are going to use config maps, secrets to externalize or pass configurations from outside. Aravind is asking how to remember all these parameters of each resource, right? That based on the experience you will get, or based on the requirement. So application team will say, this is my requirement. I have some file within my container. I want that file configurations to be passed from outside. They will say, this is my pod, this is the file. I want to externalize that file. In that case, you have to think what Kubernetes resource I can use. This is not important. This is not important. The concept is important. They will come with the requirement. They will come with the requirement. Okay, so the concept is important. Tomorrow this application, but once you get into a project, they might be having a different application, but the concept remains same, right? Can we have list of values? No, only key value. Key value. It is not a list of values. Okay, if you have that kind of requirement, right? They can go for a property file or XML file. They can read from those property file or XML file application team. Then will you able to pass those XML file, property file to your pod if they are reading the properties from file? In that case, can you create a config map or secret with file content, and will you able to mount that file to your pod so that it will reflect in your pod? Now, if I change this config map now and if I apply, now let me change this config map. Now, if I change this config map, instead of Balaji, I wanted to have a Mithun. I'm changing this config map, and this config map file is mounted as a value for this deployment. If I change and apply, but your pod has to be recreated, okay? Your deployment has to be recreated, then only it will work. If there is any change in the config maps or secrets, your pods has to be recreated or restarted, then only it will reflect. Now, if you see, my config map is changed. My config map is changed, but why it is not reflected in my deployment? My config map is changed, this value, but why it is not reflected in my deployment? Because any changes in the configurations or config maps or secrets, it has to restart your pods. If for some reason I can intentionally delete and apply, or for some reason if the pod goes down and recreated, then will that change will reflect? I'm intentionally deleting, right? Now, if the pod is reloaded, which means pod is recreated now, then you can see that change. Eight, 5, 7, 5, 4, 8, 7, 5, D8, DM27. 1 second, guys. Now, if you see, is it reflecting? Am I modifying directly? Am I modifying directly any configuration within my container, within my pod? Am I directly modifying anything? No, I'm not directly modifying anything. But how it is getting reflected? We are mounting that configuration file as a value. If there is a change in your config map content, if the pods are read applied, does those configurations are reflecting in your pod, the files, the configuration files? So this is how the config maps and secret works, guys. Very, very important concept. In real time also we'll use these config maps and secrets. Any question on these config maps and secrets? At high level, config maps and secrets are used to pass configurations to our pods, our containers, our applications. Using config maps and secrets, can I externalize configurations from our applications, basically containers, pods in Kubernetes? Yes. So configurations can be, can be written as an environment variable or key value pair. So I can have a config map with based on your use case, right? Based on your use case, I can have key value pairs also. Here, key value pairs, the arbitrary data. If it is a key value pair, if it is a key value pair, then how can I pass those key value pairs here for my application as a environment variables or command line arguments? Your application, your container has to be capable to read those as a environment variables or command line arguments. I can have like this also, key value pair or file content. That is depends on what? That is depends on the application, how they are trying to read those configurations. Whether they are reading the configurations as an environment variables or they are loading the configurations from some files. If they are loading the configurations from some files, then can I use config map with file? Can I mount that config map as a value? If the application is loading as a file, the configurations are loading as a file? Yes. If the application is reading those configurations as a environment variables, then can I just define key value pairs as a config maps or secrets, and can I pass those environment variables using env? In the previous example, Spring Boot example, how I was passing configurations? In the previous example, how I was passing configurations as an environment variable. So based on your use case, based on your requirement, you can apply this logic. Is everyone clear, guys? What is config map? What is secret? How we can use those config maps and secrets in Kubernetes pod manifest? Why config maps? Why secrets? This is very, very important also. I think Rajkumar can answer this, right? He is already working on Kubernetes in his project, so he can answer, right? Is this config maps and secrets are used in your application, Rajkumar? If you are already working, I think you are working, I know. Are you guys using all these concepts, config maps, secrets, in your actual application project Kubernetes? Yes. Okay. Now, before I wrap up the session for today, now I want to deploy applications from the Docker private registries. Let's say that can be Docker Hub private registry, or that can be ECR, or that can be Nexus. Then if I have a private registry, without authenticating that with registry, does Kubernetes will be able to pull images from the private registry? Now if you see, in Docker Hub also you can create one private registry. In Docker Hub also it will allow us to create one private registry. If you see this one, if you see, you can create one private registry in Docker Hub also if you want to create. But how many private registries can be created if you are using public Docker Hub? How many private registries can be used? For public, in case of public Docker Hub, you are using public Docker Hub, only one. So you can create a private registry also for testing purpose. You can go here, click on create private registry. You can select this one, and you can create a one registry like this. Then can I tag this registry with my image? Can I push this to this registry when I'm building the image? By authenticating. By authenticating, you can push to this registry. I already have a private registry. If you see this one, do you see? Is it a private registry? This one, you can see here, private. Now, if I try to deploy this image, which is part of a private registry, then let me take this image. If I try to deploy that application, since it's a private registry, is it able to pull the image, guys? Now, let me delete all other applications. Let's say I want to deploy that application. I want to deploy that application. I want to deploy that application from that image. But this image is, even though it is in Docker Hub, is it a private repository within the Docker Hub? I explicitly created. This is the tag I have. This is the tag I have. So I am trying to create from this image. So this is a private repository. If I try to deploy this one, if you want to create service, you can create service also. If you want to create, you can create service also for that application. Now if I try to apply this manifest in which I am using private repository, Does Kubernetes will be able to successfully pull the image since it is in a private repository? This is a private repository, right? Let me apply. If you see, why this error, error image pull? Why this error image pull? Why this error image pull? Why it is saying? What it is trying to say? Full access denied. Repository may require authentication. Actually, the registry name is correct, repository name is correct, tag is also correct, but why it is not able to pull? Why it is not able to pull? Because of it's a private registry. In that case, do I need to authenticate in each and every server in Kubernetes cluster? Do I need to go to each and every server and execute Docker login with that registry? No, not required. It is not like that. So what we can do, right? We have to create a secret. We have to create a secret. In Kubernetes. We have to create a secret in Kubernetes, something like this, right? How to pull the image from private registry using in Kubernetes, right? So you can do this way, something like this. You can create a secret. You can create a secret. If you already have that Docker login file, you can create a secret like this. Otherwise, you can create a secret by providing a credentials, on the command itself, like this. You can create a secret like this first. You can create a secret like this. What type of secret? We are creating a secret. What type of secret is that? What type of secret? In the command itself, kubectl create secret. What type of secret? As I told, Kubernetes has a different types of secrets, opaq, tls. What type of secret I am creating here? Docker registry type. So this is your secret name. This is your secret name. So here if it is a nexus registry, can I give that nexus registry URL? When you executed Docker login in the last time, you used -u, -p, that URL, that registry URL. So if it is a nexus registry, can I give that nexus registry URL here? Docker server equals to that URL, something like this. If you are using IPs, or can I use ECR URL? If I am trying to use ECR, can I give that ECR repository URL here? ECR repository URL, its username and its password. Now I am using Docker Hub. Here, can I give something like this? My username, whatever username, password, my password, whatever password, your registry password. This is optional. If you want to give email, you can give, otherwise you can leave. This is not mandatory. This email, something like this. It is not mandatory. Now here, if I am using Docker Hub, the Docker Hub URL, right? Even though you don't give, right? Right? Something like this you have to give. Even though you don't give, that will be taken as a default. that will be taken as default, even though you don't give, right? That will be taken as default. That URL, this is not that one. So that is, let me try. 1 second, let me try this. The Docker Hub URL. Okay, let me try. I will not give that URL. Let me create. If that works, otherwise I will see what option we can use. Now I am passing like this, username and password, right? Let me create a secret with my Docker Hub credentials and URL. But I don't want to reveal my Docker Hub password. I'm trying to stop the share, screen share for some time, and again I will start. Okay, let me stop the screen share for some time. Then I will start the screen share. Okay, I am sharing my screen again. So I created a secret, something like this. I created a secret, something like this, Docker Hub secret, with my username, my password, but URL I have not given. So let's see if that can be taken as a default. Docker Hub will be taken as a default, URL. Now I created a secret in my Kubernetes, kubectl get secrets. You see, I created a secret of Docker, this type, Docker, this type. Now, in my pod manifest, right, I can pass that something like this, image pull secrets. In my pod manifest, under container spec, I mean to say under your pod spec, you can pass as image pull secrets like this. You can pass something like this. Here, under your pod template, right, you can pass something like this, image pull secrets, that secret name, the name. So whatever secret I have created, so I have created a secret with this name, I guess, something like this. This is the secret name I have created, right? So in my pod manifest, I am passing like this, image pull secrets, that secret name. Now let me delete this and apply, because I am using, or let me apply deployment I am using, right? So let me apply. Now if you see, I created a secret I am passing that secret. I am passing that secret. I am passing that secret as a image pull secret. Now it is in a pending state. Let's see why it is in pending state now. Let's see why it is in pending state. It is in pending state for a different reason. But is it able to successfully pull the image? Now I passed image pull secret. Now it is not in this error. It is in a pending state. Why it is in pending state? If you see, it is not for authentication issue. Why it is in pending state? It is saying insufficient CPU. Insufficient CPU. Am I requesting something? Am I requesting anything? Any CPU, any memory? Okay. I'm requesting some CPU and memory. This much is not available because some other applications are running in the test namespace. So some other applications are running in a test namespace. It doesn't have any CPU and memory. Okay. Maybe let me reduce the CPU and memory capacity. I'm requesting this much, it is not available. This much CPU is not available. Let me request less CPU. Now let me apply that file again. If you see, now is pod is coming into container creating state, which means is it able to successfully pull the image even though I am using private image, since I am passing that secret, since I am passing that image pull secret in this manifest. If you see, I created a secret. How I am passing that secret? As a which option? As a which option? What option I am using to pass the Docker registry credentials to Kubernetes? As an image pull secret. So what happens, right? We created a secret with this name. Does this secret holds our Docker registry credentials? What is the URL? What is the username? And what is the password of that registry? Does this secret has that information? Yes. So when we are applying this one, this information will be passed to the kubelet, in which pod, wherever pod is going to be scheduled, in whatever node pod is going to be scheduled, the Kubernetes controller, the Kubernetes master will send that information also, that Docker registry credentials information also to the kubelet. So what kubelet does in that machine, wherever the pod is scheduled, does kubelet will use that information to authenticate with your registry. This information, the secrets will be passed to the kubelet which is running in that node wherever your pod is scheduled. The kubelet will use these credentials and it will internally authenticate with the registry, then it will pull the image. So the kubelet internally will execute those authentication commands, it will authenticate, then it will pull the image. So this way, can I use private registries? Can I pass my private registry credentials like this in my pod manifest image pull secrets by creating a secret? Is everyone clear, guys, how we can use private registries in Kubernetes, how authentication with registry works in Kubernetes? So why Kubernetes is, why we need to create a secret for registry credentials? Why not configmap? Why not configmap for that secret, registry secrets, registry information? Why it is secret? Because it's a confidential information. It's a confidential information. Does your registry credentials, is it a sensitive data? It's a sensitive data. So that's why we have to create it as a secret. That secret we can pass as a image pool secrets. Okay, guys. That's it for today. Config maps and secrets, and how to use private registries also as a to create the pods, and how can we pass the registry credentials to our pod manifest we have discussed. So in the next class, I'll try to discuss about liveness probe and readiness probe, and let's see if I can start stateful set also in the next class. That is on Monday. Okay. Once that is done, slowly we will go to RBAC and all those stuff, guys. Okay. Once liveness probe, readiness probe is done, slowly we will go to what is EKS, what is ingress, what is RBAC. We'll cover all those things. Thank you, guys. That's it for today. Have a great weekend. We'll continue on Monday. We'll continue on Monday. Try to practice whatever has been discussed so far. Okay, we'll continue on Monday. Anyone has any question before I start the session for today? Okay. If not, I'm stopping the session. We'll continue on Monday. Thank you.